Welcome back to the Kings of Horror.
Every day throughout the month of October, Ryan and I are reviewing a different Stephen King horror movie.
And today we are reviewing George Romero's The Dark Half. Like so many Stephen King tales, this one concerns, once again, a novelist. Here we meet Thad Beaumont, who occasionally writes under the notorious pen name George Stark. When he publicly lays George Stark to rest, a series of murders surrounding Thad pin him as the main suspect. George Stark seems to have taken on a life of his own, but what does he want? Despite The Dark Half's many release delays, the film proved to be really cool. I really like it. I think it's very faithful. My only concern is that Timothy Hutton doesn't necessarily play George Stark too well. I think he's a great Thad Beaumont. George Romero, on the other hand, fares really well as a director. It's nice to see him outside of the whole zombie subgenre. It's got a good pace to it. It's got a good atmosphere to it. It feels very main. And all the characters involved in the film are terrific. Dark Half is one of my favorite Stephen King films for sure.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually was unfamiliar. I saw this for the first time when we were, when
you were tasked with this?
Yeah, and I wasn't entirely sure what to suspect. I think I confused it with Graveyard Shift, actually. Like, I thought this one was about killer rats or something. And yeah, this movie took me by surprise. This doesn't get a lot of press.
No.
But it's very classy. Mm-hmm. It's got a couple of really good shots in it. The shot of the brain, which I'm not going to say anymore, but like that was, I had to rewind. I was like, what the fuck was that? That was awesome. Yeah. There are things that keep this from being a great movie for me, though. I think for the first half of the movie, it seems like a really obvious setup that Thad is going to be like a multiple personality thing. And when you find out what it really is, part of it's kind of cool, but it's also so ludicrous that it kind of sends the film into a strange other direction which is fine. It's still very watchable and fun, but it keeps the film from having a certain consistency that I think keeps it from greatness. And I'm a little confused by the ending. Which, because there's a confrontation, and then the sparrows come in, and I'm like, I thought that was supposed to have a very, negative repercussion for Thad, but I guess not, and it feels like that was kind of tacked on to sort of end the film. The other thing about this movie that kind of gets me is Michael Rooker might be the worst sheriff in movie history. All the evidence leads to you, so, just stay here. I'm not going to arrest you yet, but, and someone else died while you were suspiciously absent, so, just stay here. Don't go, well, you can go to New York. But it's all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. For me, the standout things are, like I said earlier, the atmosphere. I like the moodiness of it all. And I also like its really weird sense of humor. When George first kills someone, he pulls the guy out of the truck and like the prosthetic limb is like hanging off the windowsill, of the truck. The whole, what's going on out here? George Stark is like, murder, you want some? It's like, it retains its really wicked sense of humor, and I like all of that, in spite of the fact that I don't think Hutton necessarily sells it all the way, but he really tries his damnedest.
You're right.
He really tries.
He's a great Thad. My thing with I think he could have been a good George Stark, but George Stark is a very broad creation.
Yes.
And I realize he's like a pulp hero character, and I get that, but there's something that's like really kind of unoriginal about his creation. I kind of wish he'd had a little bit something more distinctive in person.
Yeah, but I do like the little flourishes that the character has. Like when they are tasked to sit down and write together, and they're like face to face, and George is like, no, not this. It's you write this way, So it's like all these little touches, and you can see like George trying to write something out, actually write the story, And overall, I think what dates the film are the effects, the effects of the sparrows coming in, pulling George apart. Spoiler alert, whatever. But I think it's a really solid film. The Dark Half, if you guys haven't seen it, definitely seek it out. It's one of George Romero's finer works that is non-zombie related. I would probably give it 3.5 out of 5 Kings.
The Dark Half is somewhat underrated. I'm not as huge a fan as Ryan is, but it's well worth watching. It's got some good suspense to it. Timothy Hutton is really excellent. I'm gonna give it 2.5 Kings. It's okay.
Check back tomorrow as we take a look at Needful Things.
Poppin' tags, yo. Poppin' tags with Satan.